Welcome to Self Principle. I'm Dr. Hashmi. Now remember, all of these videos are always for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice. Always consult a healthcare professional. And as always, the opinions are my own. Now today we're going to discuss the complete guide to creatine. We're going to talk about the myths, the science, the benefits, and really, what does the research actually shows? So let's start from the basics. What is creatine? Well, if you go back to 1832, there's a French scientist who discovered it initially. There are over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies that talk about both its safety as well as its benefits. In fact, this is one of the most researched supplements in the sports and health science field. So today, what we're going to cover is 10 of the most common myths about creatine, and we're going to debunk every single one of them so you know the misinformation that's around. And then we're going to talk about 10 of the best benefits that are backed by research. And most importantly, we'll give you information on who really ought to take creatine and how do you take it effectively. So let's dive into part one, which is understanding the creatine basics. So what is creatine? Well, for one, it's naturally produced and your body makes about 1 to 2 grams per day from the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas. It's actually found in foods and predominantly animal-based foods, so red meat and seafood are the best dietary sources. They have about 1 to 2 grams per pound. Now, as you cook food, cooking does degrade some of the creatine. So when you talk about supplementing can apply to everyone, especially if you're somebody who's vegetarian or vegan. And when it comes to creatine actually gets stored as phosphocreatine. Yeah, it's a big name, but what you really want to know about is it's basically a rapid energy reserve. It's like your bank account. When you get into trouble, you can tap into savings account. So it's in there in the muscles waiting for you. And the best part about creatine is when you're doing any kind of intense activity, especially ones that have short bursts, sprinting, lifting, jumping, or as you guys know, my daughters love to do wrestling. So in wrestling, there are very quick, short bursts of energy matches. Creatine is absolutely wonderful. And what's important to understand about creatine is creatine really powers our ATP energy system. ATP, what you want to know about it, is basically the fuel inside your cells. And creatine helps to regenerate that fuel, especially during high intensity efforts. So when it comes to how creatine works inside our body, well, it's pretty complicated, but to make it super simple, you have this phosphocreatine system. And so basically you're producing ATP, which is once again, the body's fuel for cells. And you're making ATP for any kind of explosive burst. And so essentially, if you want to think about the most simple understanding of creatine is, if you're talking about power output, you can increase that by about 8 to 10 seconds more than you could otherwise. So in terms of how it impacts your cells, and this is where a lot of the myths come in, is it pulls water into muscle cells, which helps to, one, improve hydration, and two, also help with things like muscle recovery. So what happens is when you take creatine, it helps to tell the muscles to grow, and it also allows all of those wonderful nutrients to get to the cells they should. So now let's jump into part two and talk about all of those myths, and let's debunk some. Let's start with my favorite. Creatine causes kidney damage. This is myth number one. And so this myth has been around for quite a long time. The reality is when you take creatine, it will increase your blood creatinine levels, but that isn't just a problem. That's not kidney damage. In other words, it turns out that creatine converts into creatinine. So the creatinine is a natural byproduct of creatine, but we use creatinine levels to see how bad the kidneys are doing. So if you're on creatine, make sure you tell your doctor. And oftentimes when you tell us, we will have you stop the creatine several days before your blood test so we can make sure there isn't a problem. In fact, there's a study by Gualano and colleagues, 2008, 12-week study. They showed no kidney stress in healthy individuals taking creatine. Kim and colleagues, 2011, they reviewed 52 clinical trials, no kidney effects. So bottom line on this myth is when it comes to creatine, it is safe for healthy individuals. And if you have kidney disease and you're going to be taking creatine, work with your kidney doctor, someone like myself or nephrologist, so that we can guide you on how to take it. Number 2, creatine leads to dehydration and muscle cramps. Another myth. And the reason for this is because people feel that if you take creatine, it's going to draw the water out of the body and cause dehydration. It couldn't be the complete opposite of what actually happens, because what happens is creatine improves hydration. It pulls water into muscles, not out of muscles. Once again, lots of good studies. There's a study 2009, Lopez and colleagues, athletes who took creatine had better hydration in that study. Powers and colleagues 2003 showed that it increased the intracellular water and improved muscle function. So the bottom line on this myth, it's going to reduce the risk of cramps and dehydration and increase overall hydration. Let's talk about myth number 3. Creatine is a steroid. This is another one of those myths that's been around a long time. The myth is creatine is an anabolic steroid, and the answer is absolutely not. Creatine is a natural compound. It is not a hormone. Rodriguez and colleagues' 2009 study showed that there's no effect on testosterone or hormonal levels. And because creatine works completely different than steroids, it is completely legal. And as I've shown in the other myths, it is actually very safe. Myth number 4, creatine is only for bodybuilders. The reason I call this a myth, because I take creatine myself and it has nothing to do with bodybuilding. It's actually a very different reason. Clearly, I'm not a bodybuilder, but this is a myth. And what you want to understand is creatine is wonderful for endurance athletes, for all types of athletes, but it's also wonderful for non-athletes. And we're going to talk about all of those use cases in just a quick second. But there are so many studies. A study just published 2024, and it's Gutierrez and colleagues. They showed that there were benefits for cyclists, for runners, for swimmers. But the bottom line here is creatine isn't just for muscle growth, isn't just for bodybuilders, isn't just for athletes. The secondary benefits when it comes to energy production, brain health, where we're going to dive into the details, so many different activities where it can improve performance. It's a wonderful supplement to consider. Myth number 5, creatine causes weight gain. In other words, the myth is that creatine will make you gain more body fat. In fact, the reality of it is creatine will increase the water or hydration inside your cells, but it has nothing to do with gaining fat. And so once again, studies by Wax et al. 2021, the creatine study showed that it increased hydration, improved muscle recovery, but there was no increase in fat. So bottom line with creatine is, yes, you will have some weight gain because it's helping the muscles to hold on to water, but there's no fat accumulation that occurs. Myth number 6, creatine is unsafe for long-term use. This is another one of those myths that if you take creatine for a long time, it'll be harmful. But the thing with creatine is it is one of the most studied substances there is. And we have so many studies that show there are no long-term safety concerns. Gualano and colleagues 2012, no negative long-term effects in healthy users, and so many other studies that we talk about in this video. So bottom line is what? It is safe for extended use when taken at the recommended doses, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, myth number 7, creatine must be cycled. Another one of those myths that you want to understand about. So the myth is you need to take breaks from creatine. The reality of it is there's no research out there that supports you need to cycle creatine. In fact, there's no reason to cycle creatine. So the data shows that once again, if you're looking at this, you want to continue taking it because it's going to help to keep those muscles saturated, keep them hydrated, work to help produce that ATP, the energy of the cells, and continue to give you those performance benefits, not just physical, but mental as well. Myth number 8, creatine is ineffective for women. This is another one of those myths. And the reason this becomes important is there are so many things where we make a very clear separation between men and women, and sometimes we as healthcare providers have it wrong. In fact, studies showed that creatine will enhance the strength, endurance, and recovery for women, both who are athletes and who are using it for other reasons. So, Kreider and colleagues, 2017, creatine supports muscle and bone health in women. So what's the bottom line on this myth? Not only is it not ineffective, I know that's a double negative, so don't get mad at me, but women can safely use creatine for performance and health benefits. Myth number 9, creatine causes digestive issues. Now, the myth is it'll cause bloating, it'll cause stomach discomfort, and the truth of the matter is, if you take a whole lot of doses, you'll have that. And some people, even at the standard dose of 5 grams a day, might have a little bit of that in the beginning. But having had so many of my patients in the thousands use creatine for decades, I've been in the profession now, 25 years. So I can tell you it is extremely well tolerated. And once again, you want to stick to the recommended doses, which is really around 3 to 5 grams a day, and that will help you to avoid any stomach discomfort. Another study, Rodriguez and colleagues from 2009, small amounts of creatine rarely cause GI distress. What small amounts? The recommended dose of 3 to 5 grams. And myth number 10, this is also important, is that all forms of creatine are equally effective. The reason I call this a myth is because the most published data, not bro science, everybody's got an opinion on this is the best form of creatine. But what I'm saying is the most published data is actually on creatine monohydrate. That is the most studied and effective form. So Kreider and colleagues 2022 is the gold standard in effectiveness. And what I always recommend is sticking to what we have the most amount of data, which of course is creatine monohydrate in doses. What's recommended and most studied? 5 grams per day. You can't tolerate it. Effectiveness still, based on studies, is 3 to 5 grams per day. Now, let's go into part 3. What are the 10 evidence-based benefits of creatine? First one, increases muscle mass. So the answer is yes, there is enhances in hypertrophy, growth of muscles, when you add on resistance training plus creatine. Taking creatine by itself and not doing any resistance training won't do a whole lot for muscle mass. But because it helps to improve hydration in muscle cells, it leads to muscle fiber expansion. It creates a beautiful anabolic environment or growth environment. It boosts the synthesis of muscle protein. It activates all of these satellite cells. It helps to repair. It helps to grow. And it reduces muscle breakdown. So in other words, it will help you to retain lean muscle mass even when you're doing calorie deficit. So when you're dieting and you know you're losing weight, you want to preserve muscle, you got to do resistance training, and using creatine can actually help. It's a common mistake to think I'm trying to lose weight, so I don't want to take creatine. No, you want to take it because it will help you to preserve muscle. Number 2, the next benefit is around boosting strength and power. So when you start to look at the data, another study, Rodriguez and colleagues, 2009, you see that when you look at compound lifts, squats, deadlifts, bench press, you see that your maximal strength gets improved in athletes who use creatine. How much? 3 to 5 grams per day. Even explosive power for sports such as sprinting, jumping, Olympic lifting, you'll find that the power gets better. And why? Because you're increasing the fuel of the cells. The ATP is being regenerated. And this allows you to generate more force. In fact, studies show that creatine users can see a 5 to 15% improvement in strength compared to non-users. Number 3, when it comes to high intensity performance, once again, if you're looking at athletes who are doing high intensity sports such as sprinting, weightlifting, CrossFit, wrestling, etc., what you'll find is any short duration, high effort activities where there's explosive movements, even in MMA, Yes, the rounds may be 5 minutes, but you have periods of burst. Creatine helps as far as helping those muscles to be able to have explosive bursts. It's going to extend your anaerobic capacity. So if you're a jogger long distance, that may not be the case, but the anaerobic component, the sprints, those you will be able to sustain with high power at a higher output for longer before you get tired. And when you look at soccer players, football, basketball players, you'll see that all of their performance can be boosted, and the time it takes to hit your peak power output is actually shortened. In other words, you can get to your peak power quicker when you're using creatine. Number 4, it's going to speed up recovery. So when we start to look at creatine, some of the things that are so amazing is it will reduce muscle damage, and it will reduce it by decreasing markers of inflammation, markers of oxidative stress, especially after really intense exercise. So it will help you to continue to train at a high level because the next day you're recovering faster, you're able to put more volume in. Therefore, little by little, you're getting faster, better, stronger. And this is the study that was done by Wax et al. And colleagues in 2021 showing that. Same thing with getting glycogen back into your body so that it's ready, it's stored. It allows you to have faster recovery of muscles after training. And there's something called DOMS. If any of you work out, you know what DOMS is, delayed onset muscle soreness, but it will decrease this soreness because it will limit the breakdown of muscles during very intense workouts. So you get shortened recovery time. You can do more, put more volume in. The more volume you're able to put in, the faster you're going to get better at whatever sport there is. Number 5 is the reason that I take it. And so that is brain health. It turns out that creatine is wonderful for protecting the brain. The fancy word is neuroprotective effects. So in other words, when you start to look at your brain's decline, cognitive decline, or looking at neurodegenerative diseases, well, there's a study, Balestrino and colleagues, 2019, show that it will reduce brain decline, reduce those things. It will make the mitochondria function better inside your brain cells. It will improve the energy metabolism inside your brain cells or your neurons. It will reduce the stress, the oxidative stress in the brain, which potentially may even help in conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even when it comes to simple things like mood. Studies show that you can actually improve depression and anxiety a little bit with creatine. So how wonderful is that you have all of these benefits for your body, but more importantly, as you get older, you also have all of these benefits for your brain. Let's go into number 6. Number 6 is kind of building on number 5 in that it's going to improve your memory and focus. So when we talk about folks that are older, folks that are under cognitive stress, the study by McMorris and colleagues back in 2007 also looked at folks that were vegetarians. What they found was all of these folks, when they took creatine supplements, once again, how much? 5 grams a day, they actually had better mental performance. And so it helps you with your working memory, so you can remember names and other things faster and better and process information better. It sort of like improves your mental endurance. We talked about physical endurance, but now we're talking about mental endurance. So if you're a student, professional, athlete, whatever it is, and you got to make those split-second decisions, well, this is your stuff. So you're going to improve your reaction time. You're going to improve your problem-solving skills. And this becomes critical whether you're an athlete or you're a medical professional like me. Number 7, it's going to prevent muscle wasting. So when we talk about things like sarcopenia, which is basically age-related muscle loss, it's going to help reduce that. It's going to support strength. It's going to help you as you get older to stay independent. And that's a study, Gualano and colleagues, 2012, that talks about this. So when we talk about cachexia and cancer patients or patients with muscular dystrophy, and there's all these muscle wasting occurring, creatine can be very helpful. If you want to make creatine work even better, you have to add resistance training, no matter what it is. Don't make it complicated. Any resistance training with creatine is going to supercharge the whole thing. And so when you're talking about what exactly is happening, what it's going to do is it's going to reduce protein called myostatin. Myostatin basically limits your muscle growth. And blocking myostatin is important. So it's going to slow down the production of it so that you can build more muscle. So once again, the secret is not just creatine, but creatine with resistance training. And this is critical if you want to be independent in your golden years. And so therefore, older adults definitely should consider creatine as part of their diets. Now, when it comes to energy metabolism, some people have this thing called CFS, which is chronic fatigue syndrome. And so what we find is that people who take creatine, their symptoms of chronic fatigue or chronic fatigue syndrome actually get better. And they have more energy, and basically they're more fun to be around because their moods are better. So it's going to increase ATP. Once again, we've mentioned that word 1,000 times already. I'm kidding, but a lot of times in this talk. And so the idea of having ATP goes so much beyond muscle that it goes into other things, your heart, your liver, your brain. And so people who have fibromyalgia, chronic pain disorders, this may actually help to regulate some of the energy production. And what's really interesting is it may also help with blood sugar levels. So it may also be beneficial for diabetics. Number 9, it can improve bone health. So it can reduce the risk of bone loss, reduce the risk of fractures. This is especially important in older adults and postmenopausal women. Now, the study is from 2022, is Cordingley and colleagues. And by the way, if I butcher any of the author's name, my sincere apologies. I'll have all the references for you guys. Now, this works by enhancing your bone mineral density. It's particularly important because when you combine this with weight-bearing exercises, resistance training, you're going to find that you can make a pretty substantial impact on your bone mineral density. It can also increase the osteoblast activity. Remember, these are the cells that are going to build bones, and it will reduce the osteoclast activity. Those are the cells that break bones. So it's increasing the cells that build bones. It's decreasing the activity of cells that break down bones. And so creatine may also help with preventing osteoporosis. How cool is that? So once again, whether you're an aging male or you're a female, especially if you're postmenopausal, this matters. And then number 10 is it has a wonderful safety profile. There are so many studies that shows that over decades of research, Rodriguez and colleagues, 2009, showed no major adverse effects in healthy individuals. No evidence of any damage to liver, to kidney, to heart in long-term studies. It is safe for both men and women. And the health benefits go so much beyond just the physical. They go beyond muscle. They go beyond performance. They affect your brain. They affect how you age. And it's one of the safest and most effective supplements as recognized by several societies, including the International Society of Sports Nutrition, or ISSN. So what's the bottom line? Creatine is one of the safest, most effective, most research supplements available. It's backed by over 1,000 studies. It's useful for athletes, older adults, basically anyone who's looking to improve their health, physical, and mental performance. So if you found this video helpful, please like it, subscribe it, share it with your friends, and I will be sure to continue to provide you science-based, not necessarily baked, but science-based content for you guys so you can continue to learn. All the references are going to be available to you so you can look up the studies on your own. And as always, thanks so much for watching.